Hi there, Glocal citizens. Welcome back to the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around manifesting a new world. I am your host, Florence Du, coming to you from the Peja Festival here in Accra. We're actually on the last day of the festival and it's winding down, but Sundays are such an interesting day here because everyone has kind of met people. So you have these new friends that you're meeting with and talking with about your works and what's new. And so I'm excited that I have this opportunity now to speak with a number of the different writers that are participating, and even those that are their first-time page-hours. My next guest is a poet, playwright, and spoken word artist whose words have wowed audiences from bar basements to electric picnic stages. He started performing in Dublin in 2016 in open mics and poetry slams, which saw him win the Slam Sunday Grand Slam and become an All-Ireland Poetry Slam finalist. Since then, he has performed for festivals like Electric Picnic, St. Patrick's Dublin Fringe, Drogheda Literary Festival, Cuirt International Poetry Festival, and First Fortnight. He is 1/3 of the collective WeAreGriot, a poetry collective that curates art events around poetry. His personal works include The Home Project, a series of poetry films, RedBeard Paddy, a poetry short film, Mmanwu, a play in the 2023 Dublin Fringe Festival, See True, a spoken word variety show, and Boy Child, a spoken word play. The last two were co-written with FeliSpeaks, Talkatives, a hip-hop poetry slam as part of WeAreGriot. His poetry is inspired by where he's from, which we'll find out more about, and where he is local. Dagogo Hart, welcome to the podcast.
No one has read my entire bio in front of me before.
People are always like, wow, okay. Most of the time they're like, wow, guess I am doing some things. So you're doing some
Interesting.
things.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So let's get started. Where are you from? Where are you local? And what is your craft?
Well, originally from Lagos, Nigeria. My parents are from southern Nigeria, but I was born and bred in Lagos, Surulere to be exact, because I know my friends in Surulere want me to be very specific.
Surulere? Say again?
Surulere.
Surulere.
Yes.
Okay.
School and lived in Surulere for 16 years.
Okay.
And I moved to Dublin, to Ireland actually specifically in 2010, and I've lived there ever since. In terms of my craft, I am an all-round writer, anything that has to do with words. My main craft will probably be poetry, and but I also write plays, create shows around poems as well, or around performances as well. But anything that has to do with words, from the page to the stage, I do, and I kind of like dabble in. So that is the craft.
The page to the stage. That was poetic. All right. So why the where? How did you come to be living and working and playing in Dublin?
That is a good question and a very, very long, long journey. When I first moved, I went to college. I went to university. I was in a place called Tralee for a year. I'm studying like pre-med there. Then I was in another place called Cork in Ireland, and I did 4 years of pharmacy there before I moved to Dublin, and I was working as a pharmacist for many, many years. But throughout that time, especially in college in Cork, I started writing. Actually, before that, when I was in Nigeria, I was part of a rap group. So I suppose that is the beginning stages of my writing. Mm-hmm. But it kind of became poetry when I was, on my own in my university room, just writing with no instruments. So it became poetry there. And after university, when I moved to Dublin, the big city, I knew I wanted to give my writing a chance and see what it was like to perform on stage or share my work. So I signed up for a poetry slam, which is one of the ones you mentioned there. Mm-hmm. Signed up for a poetry slam there, and my first time performing, it went really, really well. I was so happy, so excited, and I was like, how can I do this for the rest of my life? And it was like the eye-opening moment. So I just started doing more slams, started getting a bit of notoriety and doing gigs and stuff like that. I started creating shows, and it's been snowballing ever since. And I finally make the made the big decision to leave pharmacy earlier this year and become a full-time artist. So
Okay.
yes,
That's
yes,
a big leap.
yes, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So where are you in Dublin? You're my first guest from Ireland or living in Ireland. So tell us about your Dublin. Where are you there?
Well, it's interesting because I actually just bought a house in the outskirts of Dublin.
Okay.
So it's not Dublin County itself, but a lot of my work was to bring me into Dublin. So I'm still finding myself either driving or taking the train to Dublin every day or every other day. But from when I left college to earlier this year when I moved, I was in South Dublin, a place called Clondalkin. And it's famous for having this like really old tower that's really high and a couple thousand years, or probably a couple centuries at least anyway, old. So it's famous for that. So we get a lot of tourists in Clondalkin. I work there as well as a pharmacist. So it's really my locality, even when I go back, and it still feels like home to an extent. And then in terms of like creativity and performing and stuff like that, a lot of my work would have brought me to Dublin City Centre. So I don't know if anyone listening will be familiar with Dublin City Centre, but there's places like Temple Bar, which is famous for its tourists, but also has like local cultural places as well for art. And then the theatres like Abbey Theatre, the Gate Theatre, places like that would also have performances on or put on shows and things like that. So I'll perform a lot in the city as well, in the city proper. Yes.
Okay, that sounds cool. So how old were you when you first left Nigeria?
I was 16.
16.
Yes.
That's young.
Yes.
To be on your own-ish.
Yeah.
Right? And that's kind of an interesting story because we talk a little bit about the migration from place to place. So tell us a little bit more about how that transpired and what it was like leaving Lagos for literally greener pastures, right?
Oh, that's a good. I was actually speaking to because I still have a group chat with some of my secondary school friends, and I was telling them, "Oh, I'm in your city next weekend," and they're like, "So Larry boy saying you're like dear city, it's your city." Like I feel like an alumni of the city at this point because I've been gone almost as long as like I was there.
Sure.
So
yeah.
But I think deep down I still consider myself a Lagos boy, or at least a Surulere boy. I say boy because I left when I was a boy.
Yeah.
I never became a man there. But I think leaving your family and your friends and everything that you've known at that age to whether you want to say greener pastures or just for more opportunities or just to try something different. The thing that happens because it's a very pivotal time in your life, especially for the male child, where you're just coming into your own of what your masculinity means. I think one of the pros of it is I was able to define what masculinity meant for me at such an early age without the cultural pressure and expectation that if I'd stayed in Lagos, much longer. So I think that's one of the advantages I had, being able to, one, the exposure to a different culture, but just being, the solitude and the loneliness as well, having to define, what it means for me. And it's a difficult road, obviously. It's a difficult path to take, having to try and fail, but having the opportunity to try again without, oh, you're not supposed to do that. You're because my family have been from Southern Nigeria, so you're a Bonny man, or you're this, or you're that, or you're a father's child. There's no neighbors that know you, that have known you since you were 2 years old, telling you, oh, you can't do this on the streets. So I think that's one of the big pros. But obviously, the obvious con would be you're young, like you're a little bit naive, and your barriers, which have kept you in, but have also protected you, have been stripped away. So there's a lot of fear. I think the primary thing is the loneliness as well. I did go with a group, but it was people that I didn't know. We all met each other for the first time because we were going in this group. So there's the loneliness, and I suppose that's one of the reasons why I turned to writing as well.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, just to be able to express myself and express my emotions. And going to a predominantly white country as well, there's the fear of, well, going there first, I wasn't thinking about what it would be like for them to receive a black person, especially the place I was in for the first time, Tralee, which is in Southern Ireland, and there's not a lot of black people there. I wasn't really thinking about it until getting there and getting some cold reception sometimes. I'm like, oh, this is the thing I've been watching on TV, that this is what racism is. Interesting. And it's easy to conceptualize it when you're not there, but when you're there and it's your everyday life, it goes from being a concept to being, a very deeply scarring and emotional thing. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I think I'm still on that journey because I'm married now with a child, and I'm going to raise a black man who was born there. So there's a lot of interesting concepts to explore.
Citizenship, and really, like, what does that mean culturally too?
Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. And the reason why I said greener pastures is because one of the things that ruffles my feathers a lot about living in this part of the world is that, sure, outside of the city, there's green, right? There's, fertile lands, all these things. Well, increasingly less. I don't know if you've heard about our Galamsey issue. We have a really...
The environment is a big conversation here.
Right, exactly. But Ireland is known to be this beautiful land of so much greenery, and then part of it is the weather, of course. But for you spatially to then be in a place where you have parks and forests and the earth is so present in all of your life, how was that transition? Or was it even something that echoes in your mind even as a creative now?
It's an interesting conversation because in Dublin there's not a lot of green, and that's because it's the big city.
Sure.
But when you go outside of the big city, pretty much in any country you get more green.
Yeah.
Because one, that's where the farmers live as well. So you have big lands with a lot of green, and they're more conscious about the environment. But then in places like that as well, there's government policy for, protecting the agriculture and protecting like their natural reserves and their parks and places like that. So I'm not 100% sure if I would say it's that different from our situation. I know in southern Nigeria, in Port Harcourt, there's government policy to preserve, like, some places. My grandma used to work in this place called Torres Beach, and I know they have that kind of policy for that place where a lot of the greenery there is being preserved and things like that. But the negative things that we have here, which you find more common in the cities, is also the same thing in Dublin City. I'm not going to lie to you. It's like, I lived for a year, I lived in Dublin City, like in basically in town proper. And you wake up to the smell of piss and vomit. Like, it's not
right.
that,
Because there's that drinking culture as well.
Yeah, there's that as well. But it's just the fact that, like, it's a major city.
Sure.
That's where, like, a majority of your population would be. That's where there's a lot less green and a lot more concrete. That's just the way it is. And that's how most countries are planned, if you know what I mean. And like you said, Ireland is lucky in the sense that its weather and its history of agriculture promotes having more green in the outskirts of the city. So if there's anything to learn from that, it's just having more government policies to protect the things that are already there. But I don't think we're that far behind, if we are behind at all.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. I gotta make it up to that place.
You should.
I think social media spoils your mindset a little bit because you don't see like Dublin City so much. You see like people going to Ireland and it's like cliffs and
that's how they package tourism.
Yeah, so. Exactly. Right. Okay. And so thinking about how, obviously you went there to study, so you were going to come up with some kind of degree, and then now you've decided you're full on creative, right? How?
Every time I hear that, I get so scared.
But that's what I was getting at. Like, you're here, you're doing festivals, but how is that transition? Like, from a financial and lifestyle perspective, how did you find yourself feeling comfortable enough to do it? And then how has it been since you've kind of made that decision?
Financially, if I'm going to be honest, I have the luck of being a pharmacist, and it's one of the professions where you never have to look for a job. So I always knew that I could always you can even be a part-time pharmacist. There's like temp positions that pop up every day for you to cover here tomorrow, cover there, So when I was leaving, I felt like because of that like easy cushion behind me, it was easy to make the decision, or easier to make the decision to take the leap. But I've also been lucky in the sense that a lot of opportunities towards when I was trying to make that decision. Okay, I'll give you a bit of backstory. So my play Mmanwu, which was my play last year in Dublin Fringe, was in September. So it was the week of maybe September 12th or 13th or something. My son, who is my first child, was born September 11th.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So it was such an emotional and life-changing week for me. And at the end of that week, I realized that the best thing I can do for him is to be the best I can be for myself. And I said to my wife at the end of that week, I think I want to do this. I think I want to actually take the leap, not just for me, but for him as well. I think it's very important that he sees that you don't have to sacrifice yourself just to make money, and that would be the only thing at the forefront of your mind. I think it's important that he sees me follow my dream and pursue my craft, and just so he sees that there's a pathway to be different and to be other, and that being okay. And thankfully she was supportive of the decision. So it was such a big week for me. And fast forward to when I finally left earlier this year, I was lucky that towards the end of last year, a lot of opportunities started coming from both like grants and opportunities to put on my work and create my own, like commissions to create more work and things like that. So when I did make the big leap up until now, I've not had to worry about it financially. And then my everyday life has been absolutely amazing. I don't have, because like I said, I left Dublin, but I was still working in Dublin. So it was, towards the end of last year, it was like a long drive for 2 hours or a train ride for an hour and a half to go to work. But now my days are waking up when I want, spending a lot of time with my son, and then choosing, when I want to write. I'm not under any pressure to write while still thinking about like a 9-to-5 job. It's been absolutely brilliant. I can take walks and relax and write and like sip wine. I feel like I'm finally living the artist life. And then obviously like taking long trips, like coming here to Accra or going to Lagos and Abuja. It's been amazing. I can't lie. It's been amazing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. That's a wonderful soft landing. Or soft launching.
Yes. We'll see how 2025 goes.
Right. Well, I think you figured out your hack. So yeah, I think it works. Thinking about the craft and that you started as a rapper. So performance has always been a big part of your writing style.
Yes, 100%.
And so I want to just kind of inch in my Glocal speak question. So this is a word, a phrase, or saying that is a meaningful part of your local experience, and why or how you've come to value it as Glocal speak.
Local experience here in Ghana
Wherever
or anywhere?
you have ever felt local.
Okay. This one might be controversial if there's any Irish person listening to this. I have a line in one of my poems that says, Chucky Allah, inshallah. And Chucky Allah is it's not something you say in public in Ireland. Oh, you could, depending on how brave you are, but it's because in Irish history, you might know about their revolution and their war to break out of, Britain or England for their own independence. And Chucky Allah was one of their more famous phrases, which became even more popular during a time called the Troubles, which is when they were trying to get their 6 counties, which is not regarded as Northern. Very, very political things I'm saying here. Anyway, the 6 counties
it's just history.
Yeah, exactly. The 6 counties of Northern Ireland away, and there's a lot of quote unquote terrorism, if you want to call it that, people trying to get their land back. Anyway, I'm not going to get political. I explained all that to say, and then inshallah, you obviously know what inshallah is. So it's two things that you wouldn't think go hand in hand in Ireland, but because of migration, obviously new peoples and new communities coming to Ireland, and obviously mixed reception like anywhere, but a lot of open arms, a lot of imbibing into the culture, and both integration and reciprocal as well. I think for me that sentence is something that stands out as to what Ireland is today and what it could be. And if you take out the political history of Chucky Allah, when you see Chucky Allah, Inshallah, is just things that you wouldn't expect to go together. But if you translate them, it makes sense. Like, we will be free, amen. But saying them in those two different languages that both like Eastern and like Arabic and Asgalga, which is Irish, is interesting.
Interesting. We're learning something new all the time. So how is your Irish?
Oh, very bad. It's very terrible. I know the Irish that goes into my poems, and that's it. yeah. So sometimes I like to use like either popular phrases or things from, if I'm exploring a concept, words that or sentences that would have been originally Irish Gaeilge in the poems, but other than that, no, it's zero.
Yeah. So that's interesting, because it sounds like in Ireland, Irish is not necessarily a primary language, because
unfortunately, it's English.
Yeah.
Well, fortunately for me, because I wouldn't have been able to live
makes
there.
Migration easy.
Yeah, exactly. But they have the same history as Ghana and Nigeria in terms of like our languages were stripped and replaced with English.
So it's maybe in the villages, maybe
they do have this thing where they have towns that are Irish-speaking towns.
Oh, okay.
Which is really, really cool. Galway, some places in Galway are pretty famous for that. People come from all over the world for holiday there, or to just live there, to explore there,
experience,
to just imbibe themselves in the culture, because those places are just purely like, Irish-speaking towns.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty cool, and we can learn a lot from that. Yeah. And they do actually as well. They do have Irish-speaking schools, so you can send your kids to Irish-speaking schools.
Okay, right. I was wondering about that. So now your son. When you think about the different tongues that you think you might want to teach him, what are you thinking?
Unfortunately, I only speak English.
Oh, okay.
And me and my wife have this conversation because in southern Nigeria, there's just so many cultures and so many languages. Like if you lived in western Nigeria, for example, and you spoke Yoruba, yes, there's different dialects, but you pretty much understand each other. Same in the east with Igbo, and then north would be Hausa or Fulani, but there's a lot of similarity there. But like, my wife's village is probably like an hour from mine, and it's two completely like different languages. Like my tribe speaks Ibani, she's Isoko. My mom is like 30 minutes down the road, she speaks Kalabari. Very different languages. So like the South is one of the like densest when it comes to that. So unfortunately, I only speak English and herself as well. But I'm a big believer that Pidgin English is it's a language of itself, because I know when me and her are outside and we speak that to each other, nobody understands
exactly.
us. So if we can get away with
it's
that.
Pidgin. So,
yes, exactly.
And I urge you to own Pidgin as a language.
Yeah, I do.
Because,
So
I speak English and I speak Pidgin. I mean, I don't, but I would, I'm trying my hardest to learn it, because, aside from the ones that we know are spoken widely across, say, Hausa spoken widely across West Africa. Pidgin is spoken as widely across West Africa. The French have their version, which has some French, words, but it's still, I think a lot of Pidgin speakers can still
understand.
Exactly.
Yeah, especially the ones that left their home countries, the ones in abroad, because your black friends are not just Nigerians. Then you have black friends from Congo, black friends from Jamaica. So when you are more imbibed in that kind of like Pidgin English as well. So I would understand more than anybody else. Yeah. So I think Pidgin, I definitely own it and I'm definitely going to teach my son Pidgin. But hopefully he also learns Irish as well. I think it's important, him being there and him being an Irishman. I think it's important for him to, well, if he wants to, I suppose, but I will put in the effort to making sure he learns Irish as well. Yeah. I think it's important.
Yeah. Makes sense. In terms of writing, do you have any Pidgin poems?
I do, actually.
Okay.
Usually when I write a Pidgin poem, it's intentional, because Pidgin finds its way into my poetry, but not like as a full-length Pidgin poem. So usually, but I have one or two Pidgin poems that I wrote intentionally. I always like practicing like that. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So let's talk about the We Are Griot, because the history of griots is to be those history savers,
Yes.
and
And
so
preservers.
preservers,
Yeah.
right? And to travel with the words of culture.
Exactly.
And so tell us about what it means to you and how you all came together.
Actually, when I first moved to Dublin, I went to a poetry slash music showcase in this place called Bello Bar in Dublin. And I saw one of my best friends at the moment for the first time there, FeliSpeaks. And she was performing there, and I was like, oh my God, you're amazing. I'm just starting off. I like to chat. We met up for coffee, spent 5 hours just sitting in a cafe, just talking about life and poetry and writing. And yeah, we started kind of becoming, I won't say famous, but we started working working in the scene so almost around the same time and growing together and stuff. And we're both doing the same thing. Why don't we just collab? Yeah, yeah. So even before we had the name WeAreGriot, we put on a show, the very first sit through, I think it was, and it sold out. It was huge. We're like, oh my God, it's amazing. We should become an official collective and do a lot of crazy poetry shows, things that people haven't seen before, bring a lot of West African culture, because she's Nigerian as well. Bring a lot of West African culture into it, mix it with our experiences here, create new history, if that's even a thing. Because I think the diaspora story is very different, especially if you live really young, it's very different from a native Irish story or an African story. Diaspora story is something quite unique. So creating that history and creating those stories and preserving them for future generations, I think is very important. So yeah, we started doing that, and then we did our first slam. And Samuel Yakura, who is a poet that moved to Nigeria, I think, to Ireland the year before, he won the first slam, and he was so good. We were like, we want you to join us. So we became a group of three, and yeah, that's how WeAreGriot was born. And we've been doing shows and slams and commission work ever since.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. It sounds like this renaissance. I feel generally like there's a renaissance going on amongst a few generations, because I think there's the X and millennial generations that are starting to butt it. I think the X's did a lot of damage with our information age advancements. But I think there are those of us who are becoming more activists about being intentional about flipping the switch, right? Like bringing it back to us and really to the people, ultimately, to influence thought and inspire new thought and new thinking. So when you're thinking about the legacy that you are cultivating and working on, how do you see yourself projecting into the broader diaspora?
Chimamanda said something I think that always summarizes the way I look at my work and the arc that I'm trying to take, which is the danger of a single story. And that resonated with me so much, and it still does. And I think everything I do now is not about, telling the story of a people. It's about telling the story of myself. And I think that's more important than anything. If you think, this story is not true of Nigerians, okay, maybe, but it's true for me because this is my experience and this is things I've seen. So anytime I create work, I try not to create what is deemed quote unquote black work, but work of a black artist. I think there's a difference there. So take, for example, my play Mmanwu that was on last year. Typically when a black artist is doing work in Ireland, and it's let me not paint it like it's the norm, but a lot of the times what gets pushed and the opportunities is things that are heavy on either racism or the black experience in abroad, or very ancient traditional things, because they're trying to showcase that Africa was this and Africa was that. But that play was a play about a young widow who had just lost her husband and moved back to her father's house to raise her child. Essentially, it was a play about masculinity and what it means to raise a man. And by virtue of it being set in Nigeria, it was obviously a black play, but I stayed away, I won't say intentionally, but like almost subconsciously, I stayed away from trying to beat over the head, the blackness, or trying to beat over the head or trying to make her move to Dublin or Ireland specifically. So to add the bits of racism and all those things that a lot of people would think that's what get the opportunity. I specifically wanted to tell a true story, an honest story about, my experiences and reflect just things that everyone can relate to and that is natural to me without trying to pander to anybody. So I think it's always important that as an artist anyway, when you're creating work, the first person you're creating that work for is yourself. And even if it's not the general story, it's your story. And you don't have to always tell the general story. There's multiple Black stories. It's not all the same.
I think that is a theme that so many artists that I've spoken to, it's really about telling their own story, they universalize the experience.
Exactly. It just comes natural because we're human beings at the end of the day.
Exactly. Yeah. So thinking of mindset, let's talk about a mindset hack. What do you do to hack your mindset?
I have a lot of mindset, even like mind and body hacks. I have a lot of them. For me, caffeine is a huge body hack.
What's your favorite?
Oh, I have a sweet tooth, cappuccino.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But the stronger the better, though. But
So that means you're moving more towards the latte-ish if it's stronger, or?
Oh no, latte is weak. My wife drinks latte. I say that like she's weak.
Okay,
no, my wife can't handle too much caffeine, so she drinks latte.
Oh right, because cappuccino has just mostly foam.
I think they all have one shot of espresso. I don't know. It's just the latte feels sweeter and it's like no. But then if you drink like an Americano, that feels too strong.
Okay.
So I think cappuccino is like the perfect balance in between. Yeah. But someone told me once, a barista told me once, they all have the same amount of like caffeine in it because it's all one shot of espresso.
I think Starbucks has changed that story, right? Because you can have 2-3 shots.
Oh yeah.
But typically, the latte has more milk, and then the cappuccino has more foam. So that's where it's less. Yeah. And then the Americano is how you cream it up yourself. So I think it is maybe just the one shot, but yeah.
Okay. But anyway, caffeine for me is a huge body hack to just get me in the mood. Even if I'm not feeling it, just the fact that I'm drinking the cup of coffee.
It makes your mind move in a different way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then music could be a huge one as well. Like I always have my writing playlist, or sometimes I'm listening to a song and it puts me in a mood to write. And then the genre of the music, if I'm listening to like boom bap hip hop, or if I'm listening to like Afro beats, or if I'm listening to blues or soul or country, I try to use music to channel the specific emotion. So that's usually like a mind hack for me when I'm writing. And it gets my creative juices flowing as well. Like you could hear a line that's like a seed of a seed in your brain that becomes, a big tree, and you pick it. I'm getting poetic now, but you pluck a leaf from that tree, and that is the idea that you're trying to write about, and you start writing. So I'd say caffeine for the body and music for the mind.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm also very task oriented as well.
Okay.
So like if I want to write a poem or a new play and I'm not feeling really creative, I just break it down into tasks. Like, okay, what do I need to do? What do I need to explore? That's where the scientist in me comes out. And I just break it down into tasks. And then once I have those tasks, then I can try to get into the creative mode and then basically tick boxes using techniques and skills that I've learned over the years from writing multiple times to just put something on the page. And then when I'm feeling more inspired, then I can go back and edit it and make it a better poem.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So what are you excited about?
Right now, I'm excited about performing tonight at the end of the festival. I'm excited about going to Abuja and Lagos to do more performances.
So that's where you're headed to after this?
Yes. We're leaving to Abuja tomorrow. I have a few sessions there.
I like Abuja.
Yes. I haven't been in a long time, but I'm excited to go back. And then Lagos as well. We have a show in Lagos International Poetry Festival over the weekend. Yes. So those are the things at the forefront of my mind. But I'm really excited to go back and hug my wife and kiss my son. So that is also at the back of my mind.
Is this the longest you've been away since
Yes, by far.
Yeah.
This is the first time since we got married that we've been apart. Yes,
Wow.
yeah. So each night is a hassle, like video calling each other. Oh, I miss you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Watch the baby sleep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's dope. So what are you performing this evening?
I have a new poem. So I have a collection of poems that I'm kind of like putting together at the moment because subconsciously I didn't realize this. I was writing a lot of poems around the idea of war or, fighting or revolution, whatever you want to call it. So this one that I really want to perform tonight is a poem about how in the middle of a war you can find love, and love can be peace in the middle of a war, or love can be freedom in the middle of being imprisoned, in the middle of revolution, in the middle of oppression. That connection with somebody else can be even more valuable than the thing that you're pursuing through the war, which is like freedom or the end of a revolution. So I think that piece I am really looking forward to because I just finished writing it a few days ago and I haven't performed it before.
Ooh,
So
we got a premiere.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to performing it for the first time. But if I have the chance, I also like to perform like other poems around the idea of war. And the very first one I wrote is called For Abala. It was commissioned, which is like war cry in Irish. And it was commissioned by, I can't remember her name now, Doreen. Okay, anyway, the idea was...
We'll put it in the show notes, so we'll...
Yes, exactly, thank you. But the idea was she was getting an artist to retell old Irish poems. Yes, and that particular one I was working with was a poem by a famous poet in Cork, which was one of the reasons why I liked it because I went to college in Cork, and it was from the revolution 100 years ago, and she was basically, it was a lament at first about the fact that they had killed her sons, but it was also like a call to the people to like basically pick up arms and defeat their oppressors. And the poem I wrote was connecting that to oppressions that we are seeing now, both in Nigeria, in Ghana, from the forefront politicians, the back front Western forces, like, to get too political, and then things that happen in Palestine, in Gaza at the moment, and just like, war, revolution, and oppression happening all over the world. It was connecting the two things, how things have changed, but not as much as we think, and how we still have a long way to go. And the way forward is with everybody, linked arm in arm and trying to fight it together with whatever kind of sword you pick up. My sword is my pen and telling these stories, whatever. And your sword is your podcast and telling the stories to the audiences. So whatever sword, nobody's saying like, some people use money, some people, pick up literal arms and go there. So whatever your sword is, I beg you, pick it up. Yeah.
I love that. That's awesome. So we've heard all about who you are as a poet, a bit of your, dad life. But I always like to ask how you spend your time when you're not working. And so typically, it's interesting to ask at a writer's festival, but I typically ask, are you a reader, a watcher, or a listener? And what are some of your favorite reads, watches, or listens? So
I'm a huge watcher.
Okay.
I'm a huge watcher. And I think the reason, which is kind of weird for a writer, but I think the reason is my writing usually comes as images in my head. And it's quite descriptive of images that I'm seeing in my head. So I'm a huge watcher of film, like videos, YouTube, things like that. But I think listening is also a huge part of my system because music is a huge part of my life, huge part of my life, but also like I listen to a lot of podcasts, a lot of video essays, things like that. Because I find if I'm not reading something, then I can multitask in my brain. I can either watch and think or listen and think, but I find it quite difficult to read and think. So the only thing I read will be short things like poetry and stuff like that. But in terms of long form, it's usually to keep my mind quiet.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I listen a lot. That's what inspired me to podcast. So I hear you on the listen. So what are some of your favorite watches and what are some of your favorite music artists?
Ooh, my favorite movie of all time is probably Fences. Do you know Fences?
The play.
Yes. Well, it's based on the August Wilson play. Exactly. Yeah. But I love movies that are just dialogue. Like you don't need to give me any action or exploding cars. Just two people talking. I could watch it for 5 hours.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so that is probably one of my favorite movies of all time. Fences. Yeah. And TV shows. Let me see. Shogun I watched recently.
Oh, the old school Shogun?
No, the new Shogun.
There's a new one.
There's a new Shogun. Yeah.
TV. That's I make content and I don't watch enough TV. But okay, so there's a new Shogun.
Shogun I watched recently and it really stuck with me because I think it was the exploration of culture and violence. Because like I said to you, I'm writing a lot of stuff about violence and war at the moment. And I used to be a pacifist. I don't know if I'm a pacifist anymore. Maybe I just got fed up. But I'm starting to see the importance of violence in, I don't know, the word violence doesn't seem right because I feel like it's been tainted to being something negative. But I think, physically fighting for the things that you believe in is important. Let me put it like that. Especially if the thing you're fighting for is being rejected physically, I think you have earned the right to physically reject.
Interesting.
So my relationship with quote unquote violence is something I'm exploring at the moment. Especially in my poetry. So Shogun, it's really, really explored violence and culture and in the Japanese culture. So I really liked it. Listening to at the moment, I'm listening to a lot of blues at the moment. Because my friend sent me Alice Smith cover of I Put a Spell on You, like Nina Simone's I Put a Spell on You. And it's one of the most hauntingly beautiful things I've ever heard. So I just went on this long for the last few weeks, listening to a lot of blues, and I'm in love with blues at the moment. So yes, those would be my things.
Those are very mood making. Wow.
Yeah.
This has been I really enjoy this conversation.
Thank you. I have as well. It's been an interesting last few days, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity. Thanks to Culture Ireland and the Republic of Ireland's embassy in Nigeria as well for bringing me down. It's been really, really interesting. Yes.
I thank you for your time and thank you for your art and your creativity. I'm looking forward to your performance later. And so before we sign off for today, do you have any last thoughts that you'd want to share with the audience?
I could share a really short poem.
Please.
I think that would be nice.
Yes.
So during the month of April, I did a challenge where I was writing a new poem every day. And when before the April started, I wrote down what each day's challenge was going to be.
Okay.
And one of the most moving days was the day I decided to write a poem to my son. So the challenge.
Was this the first one you wrote to him?
Yes. Okay. Yes. And so the challenge was a poem to 21-year-old Asher.
Okay.
I think I've done this poem a few times, but it's still something that just still sticks with me. I can't really picture it. You grown with teeth probably taller than I am now. Grow all the teeth in the world, but fights to keep your smile. You are the brightest beam in the whole house, my son. Your voice travels through these new walls, giving them stories and color, making it home. So fight for your laugh. Laugh when nothing is funny. Laugh at yourself. Laugh with tears in your eyes. Laugh with calloused hands and tired bones. Let it serve as a reminder that sunrise never has a choice. Let it bend frowns and mend hearts, my darling son. I write this with the fear of an entire world in my heart. I wish I could fix it all for you. I still don't have the answers. I'm sorry for all the times I will fail. I pray I'm next to you as you read this. But if I am not, if the call of my forefathers was too loud to ignore, then please do not live in fear like I did. Please live.
The traditional poetry slam snaps. Yes, thank you for that. Thank you. That was lovely. Your heart was in it.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. It was a very heavy day.
Yeah. All righty. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Glocal citizens, this has been another episode of the podcast. You can catch us Tuesdays with new episodes at glocalcitizenspod.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Please like, share, subscribe. Leave us a review. You can leave up to a 5-star review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube. And we're still looking for 100 reviews in 2024. So let's get there, folks. We have about, not even 90 days. So let's try to get there. In any case, as always, and until next time, bye for now.